This is the lesson for this week for language, and it's about the passives. We're going to look at passives today. Okay, so I will share my screen. Please pause the video when I say pause, so you have time to do the tasks. Okay. Last week we did conditionals. Okay. If I were an animal, if only I had, all of those conditional contexts we looked at. Did you do your homework? The homework was, let's have a look, the lesson about going from Bissau to Bafata and talking about different forms of transport. If we go by helicopter, if we went by helicopter, it would be very expensive. If we go by car, it will also cost a lot. If we walk, it will take too long. If we go by bus, it's probably the best way. It will take about 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours. Okay, so talk about the homework you did. If you taught that in class or something similar, pause the screen to discuss these 3 questions. Okay. Okay, so what do you think is more important? As we discussed last week, I think the student's role is more important. The teacher has to set up the task and give the feedback and instructions, but the students need to produce the language to show that they understand and can use it. So in your lessons, number 2, who could be speaking more in those lessons? I think students could, because they are producing all the options. How can we move to more student-centered language practice lessons? If we do more of these tasks where the students are involved in real life situations, have a look at the ELTA-GB website for more lessons like this. And we're going to continue today by looking at student-centered language practice. Okay? Right. So today's topic is passives. Okay, I want you to discuss in pairs these 2 questions. Which context in life do we use passives? It can be when you're speaking in Creole, Portuguese, any of your other languages, or English. And which contexts do you use to teach passives in class, and why? So pause the video for 5 minutes and discuss in pairs or small groups of 3. Okay. Okay, so what did you decide? Okay, we're going to look at some contexts when we use passives in real life, and these lessons are based on those contexts. But often teachers in class take the passive out of context and translate from the active, which is not very realistic, and we don't really use language like that in real life. Let's have a look at some lessons. This is one of my favorite lessons, so we're going to do a few lessons together, okay? I want you to follow these instructions. So in a minute, when you pause the screen, you can do this. Small groups, get a piece of paper, decide on 1 plant product that you need to tell the story of. Okay, it could be cotton, corn, sugarcane, palm oil, rice, anything like that. Decide on a product. You don't need to know all the information, just the general story. Then in your group, you need to draw the story of that plant, starting from the beginning, from the seed, and then going through the process of growing and harvesting and whatever else, and transporting, and to the end when it is eaten or people drink it. Just a few simple pictures to show the story. Okay, you have 5 minutes in groups to draw the story of a plant product. Pause the video now. Okay, ready? Right, the next stage of this lesson, I want you to present your story to another group. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes, turn to face another small group, and in turns, you need to present your story to the others. And pause the video now. Okay, great. So that's a very student-centered start to the lesson, because all of you are involved in the language, you're involved in the stories of the plant products. Let's move to the next stage. Some questions here. Thinking about those stories, what do you think is more important, processes or the people? And how can we show that the process or the action is more important than the people who we don't even know? 2 or 3 minutes, pause the video to discuss these questions, thinking about those food stories. Pause. Okay, what did you decide? Did you decide that the process is more important and that we can use the passive language to show that the process or the action is more important? We don't even know who the people are. It could be any people. So this is what we need. This is the grammar that we need. And it's not difficult. It's the subject, singular or plural. Then we have the verb to be in the right tense. And then we have the past participle. Okay, so subject, to be, past participle. Not difficult. But are the past participles difficult? There are many regular past participles, which are easy, and some irregular past participles, which we have to learn, yes? So I want you to look at this list and divide them up. These are all the types of verbs you can use to talk about the stories of the food items. Decide if these verbs are regular or irregular past participles. Pause now to discuss. 5 minutes. Okay. Easy? Difficult? How many of these have irregular past participles? Not many. Let's see. So all of them are regular ed endings, except for 2 of them, and they go with the product, the story of cotton. So you spin the cotton round, 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 round on a spinning wheel, past participle spun, and you can weave the cotton, weaving in up and down over material, and you get woven material from that. All the others are regular. Okay, so we've looked at a bit of the grammar. So now we need to improve those stories because we need to use the verbs in the passive. Let's do one together. So we can do the story of cashews. And I love cashews, and I know Guinea-Bissau loves cashews as well. So let's have a look. I've put a very short summary of the story here with gaps for you to put the verbs in. So let's work out what we're going to do. Number one is the verb plant, and it's a plural subject, the seeds. So which part of the verb to be do we use? Yeah, are. So we're doing present simple passive, the process, it's always true. First, the seeds are regular or irregular, planted, are planted, yeah? What are the next two or three? Yeah, so the number two is plural again. They are watered, regular verb, and fertilized, but not usually sprayed. Yeah, so that verb to be after they can go with all three verbs. Okay, I want you to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Export at the bottom is number 12. In pairs, I'll give you 5 minutes. Please pause the video. Okay, did I get the story right? I'm just writing this from what I've seen or people have told me. Maybe I've got some points wrong because I'm not an expert in cashew nuts like you are. Okay, did you get all the answers? Okay, number 5, they are picked and taken to Banjing Market. There, they are sold and taken to people's homes where they are burnt to take out the nut. Finally, they are eaten or sold or exported. Okay, so sell and eat also have irregular plurals, but they are quite common verbs. Is that a better text now? Because it's in the passive, so it's talking about the process instead of the story in the active. I think it looks quite a good text, yeah? So what you could do now, what I do with students is I get the groups to work on their story, to change it into the passive. Then they can present their completed story to the class and they can write out their story. If you want to do that now, you can, but we have some more lessons to do. We're going to look at some more passive contexts. So that was the first lesson, a lesson about processes using the passive. Now we've got 2 more lessons to look at for you to practice the passives in context. Okay, ready? The next one is about animals, the animals we need. Okay, so we've got a bit of reading and then grammar work. So let's look here. 3 pictures. What are those animals? 2 minutes in pairs, discuss and pause the video. Okay, do you know what they are? Now this, hopefully, it makes you interested to read about them. I'm going to show you 3 short texts, one about each animal, and you need to read really quickly, not every word, but just skim through quickly to pick out the information. We need to find out from each slide just 2 things. What's the animal? How can we save it? Okay, so don't pause now. I just want you to read really quickly. Good practice at skimming. Are you ready? 2 questions. What animal? How can we save it? The first one. You ready? This one. Okay. Second one, again, what's the animal? How can we save it? Number 2. Okay, ready for number 3? What's the animal? How can we save it? Okay, that's very, very quick reading. And I want to give you practice at skimming just to pick out some details. Very good practice for reading. Let's have a look. The first one, the animal is the crane or the whooping crane. How can we save it? Teaching them to migrate. Interesting. And maybe an incubator. Yeah. Number 2, what's the animal? That's a frog, an endangered poisoned dart frog. How can we save it? Yeah, this is breeding frogs and setting them free. And the third one, what's the animal? Yeah, this is the rhino, the rhinoceros. And that's from Indonesia and Asia. How can we save it? Provide covers, use IVF techniques. Lots of ideas there. Okay, so we don't want to read for more detail now. We want to work on some of the language in this text. Now, we have some verbs here on the right. The verbs are red, and we have some gaps on the left. Can you, in pairs, complete the text on the left? Let's do one together first. Number 1. Which verb do you think fits the gap? Yes, it's D. So the first crane chicks raised by humans in costumes were taken to Central Florida. So 1 is take, and we need the past participle, taken. Okay, pause the video now and in pairs, do the rest. Okay, finished? Let's have a look. Here are the answers. Did you get this? These are all the past participles, part of the passive. At the bottom, there are 2 questions in red. I want you to pause and discuss how many irregular verbs and how many different passive tenses. Discuss with your partner, 3 or 4 minutes. Pause now. Okay. So how many irregular verbs? Yeah, we've got take, taken, set, set, breed, bred, and bear, born. And how many different passive tenses? We have the past simple passive, were taken. The present perfect passive, has been destroyed. And the present simple passive, are protected. Okay, 3 different passive tenses. Here is the summary. Can you match the A, B, C with 1, 2, 3? Pause for 2 minutes and match. Okay. Yes, so A is 3, B is 1, and C is 2. Okay, the Brown question, how can you learn the irregular past participles? That's difficult, isn't it? So you have to have a list maybe and test yourself, check regularly and practice and use them. And the green point is important. This is always passive. I was born in English from the verb bear. Okay, so that is another lesson. We did it very quickly. We could do it in a lot more depth. And it's about the scientific work with animals. We had the first story about the process, this one about scientific work. And we've got one more lesson and context. This is about news stories. Okay, let's have a look at this lesson. We start with pictures. I want you to pause the video and discuss in pairs. What do you think the stories are and which countries do you think they come from? Okay, pause now. Okay, that's to get people interested. Are you interested now? Okay, we're going to the next part. I'm not going to tell you the countries yet. Right, this slide, we have 15 sentences. These are all summaries of news items. I want you to look through these sentences with a partner and try to decide which country do you think they could be stories from. For example, number 1, which countries need protection against tsunamis? It could be somewhere in Asia, couldn't it? It could be Thailand, Indonesia, one of those Asian countries. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, just say what you think. Pairs, discuss, pause now. Okay. In the lesson, we then get the students to read to find out which countries all these stories are from, but we're not going to do the reading in today's lesson. We're going to move on to look at, there is the link where you can read the stories from, but we're going to move on to look at the grammar. Now, which grammar is included in all those sentences? Sorry, I think there were 15, not 18. I've cut them. We're going to underline the examples. Are the examples the same? And why is this grammar structure used? So let's have a look again and see which grammar. Are they all the same? And why this grammar? Tell your partner and pause now. Look at the verbs. Okay. Right, so I've underlined them now for you, and they are all passive. Why? Why are they passive? It's because they are part of news stories, and the action is more important than the people. We don't even know who the people are a lot of the time. The action is the most important thing. The passive is used a lot in news stories. Are they all the same tense in the passive? No. So number one, for example, is the present perfect passive. So we have the verb to be in the present perfect, and then the past participle, planted is regular. Number two, yes, the same, present perfect again. Let's look at number four. What tense is that? It's past simple passive, isn't it? Past simple of the verb to be plus the past participle, that's regular. And then number five, which tense? That's the present simple passive, plural of the verb to be, spoken is irregular. So you can look at all the different examples. You can get the students to analyze them, to find different examples. And then you can break them down. Now, the passive, it's quite good to break it down to find out who or what does what to who. Let's do some examples together. So these are the same sentences from before. In sentence A, who is doing the protecting? It's the guards, yeah, or the water, or the fences. What is the action? Protecting. And who is it doing it to? The country. So we understand the action by breaking it down. In B, 1,000 people were arrested. Who did the arresting? We don't know. It's not important in the sentence, but probably police, probably. The action was arresting and did it to 1,000 people. And number C, trees have been studied. So who did the action? We don't know. It's not important in a passive sentence, but it's probably scientists or students. The action was studied and they did it to trees. Okay, so if it helps, then you could do some more reading and analysis to break down the sentences in this way. Okay. You can carry on. I give my students some more short news stories to write about. You can, if you want to, look at this link. It's all from my website. And then as you're writing them, you can check all the passive sentences, check you have part of the verb to be, the past participle, is it regular or irregular, and then check back to see if it makes sense, what you're writing. Lots of good practice that students can do in pairs to make sure they understand. Okay, so this is the end. And I've put a summary here. So we use passives mainly to talk about processes like the cashew nut harvest, or to report in news stories, and also scientific reports maybe, or when we don't know who did the action, or when the person who did the action is not important. So these are the contexts when we use the passives. So we need to teach the passives in the same sort of contexts. For example, processes, news stories, reports, formal English, not as translations from active verbs, which is just playing with language and it doesn't really reflect real language. Do you agree with that? Pause the video now and discuss in a small group if you agree after all our examples. Okay. Okay, so the final thing, your homework for this week is to ask one person from your group to write out the story of the plant product you did. Write it out in the passive and post it in the language WhatsApp group. Okay, have a good week and I'll see you next week.